We have a very simple but tricky question here. A lot of English students would fail this question, and even some English teachers, if they do not pay close attention to details. The question is on relative pronouns. Which versus that. I bought a car, blank uses solar energy. A, which uses solar energy. B, that uses solar energy. C, options A and B are correct. Now, the relative pronoun which is used for non-humans, while that can be used for both non-humans and humans. And now, looking at the sentence, this space relates to the car. And of course, a car is a non-human. And since both which and that are used for non-humans, you might be tempted to think that option C, which says A and B are correct, is the right answer. But you are entirely wrong. The correct answer to this question is option A, which. So that the sentence reads, I bought a car which uses solar energy. But the question now is, why is which correct and why is that wrong? Which is correct because of this comma here. It is this comma that makes which to be correct, and it is this comma that makes that to be incorrect. What do I mean? This is a complex sentence. I bought a car is the independent clause, which uses solar energy is the dependent clause or the relative clause. When you have a complex sentence and there is a comma after the independent clause, this comma simply tells you that the relative clause that follows is non-essential. In other words, it is a non-essential relative clause, otherwise known as non-restrictive relative clause. Once you have a comma that marks off the independent clause, the comma simply tells you that the relative clause that follows is a non-essential relative clause or a non-restrictive relative clause. And non-essential relative clauses take only which, they don't take that. That can only introduce an essential relative clause or a restrictive relative clause. But here what we have is a non-essential relative clause. It is a non-restrictive relative clause, which we know because of this comma. And being a non-essential relative clause, it cannot begin with that, but can only begin with which. Hence, which becomes the correct answer. Do you understand? Now, in case you don't understand what essential and non-essential relative clauses are, listen. Non-essential relative clauses, these are clauses that are not too important in the sentence, such that you can remove them from the sentence and the noun being talked about can still be identified by the person to whom you speak. Why essential or restrictive relative clauses are clauses that are so important to the sentence such that you cannot remove them from the sentence, because if you remove them from the sentence, the noun which they relate to cannot be identified by the person to whom you speak. And when you have restrictive relative clauses, there is usually no comma that separates the independent clause from the relative clause. Do you understand? Thank you very much for watching.